It all started in Haley, Idaho at Wood River High School. This guy, Larry Barnes, decided to teach a class called Wildlife Biology. That's us. We are a set of adventurers, intrepid young scientists on a mission to find the answers to various questions relating to the biology of the Wood River Valley. We're Team Jaguar. This is Tim Boyle. He's a junior at Wood River High School and loves to hunt, especially ducks. He's considering majoring in the field of biology, and this class is one of his favorites. This is Shaylin Bernstein, another part of our group. She's a senior at Wood River High School and a scientist at heart, and is heading to the University of Hawaii this fall to study marine biology. And this is me, Tenny Schwartz. I'm a senior here at Wood River High School, and I come from a family of biologists and love studying the Wood River Valley and what it has to offer. At the beginning of the semester, Mr. Barnes gave us a challenge. Come up with a question to answer over the next few months, give your project a title and hypothesis, and start investigating. So here's our project: Human Effect on Waterfowl Habituation in the Wood River Valley. We started with a simple question. How does human presence affect waterfowl habituation at the Croy Creek Preserve and Silver Creek Preserve in southern Idaho? It was in our interest to gain a better understanding of the habituation of waterfowl in several areas of the Wood River Valley. We sought to understand what human activity does to affect the activity of waterfowl and the reactions when they become accustomed to humans versus when humans are foreign to them. We wanted to understand the difference between areas which are prone to disturbance during the fall and winter hunting season versus those which are protected. We also hoped to understand the reactions of the waterfowl at each study site to human interaction. Our hypothesis? We predicted that the areas that are hunted would show a greater fluctuation in activity of waterfowl due to human presence compared to those which are not hunted but see a steady amount of human activity. We foresaw that as human activity increases, the waterfowl would slowly become accustomed to human activity. Although we expected to see a change between the two study sites, we expected a much greater flight distance at Silver Creek, which is hunted during the fall and winter season, compared to the Croy Creek Preserve. Then we started a vital step in scientific investigation, research. We found that the waterfowl in the northwest region of the United States and Canada may include species such as the mallard, pintail, teal, widgeon, Canada geese, which have 7 separate species, and brant. The birds that I listed include those that are most commonly harvested, which means that they are taken by hunters and reported at the end of the hunting season. In an article titled Flight Distance and Eye Size in Birds, authors Johannes Eritzow and Anders P. Moller discuss the effects that common predation versus uncommon predation of birds living in secluded habitats had on the physiology of a bird. According to Moller and Eritzow, birds that live in a habitat where there is constant fear of predation typically have larger eyes compared to the birds living in more secluded habitats. Therefore, it makes sense that, in evolutionary terms, the birds living in areas where there is high threat will evolve to have bigger eyes as well as bigger brains, as the article states, that their brains will need to grow so that they can handle the larger amount of processed information the birds deal with as they take in their surroundings. The research we conducted affirmed our hypothesis, stating that as human activity increased, the activity of waterfowl in the area would decrease. Next, we needed to figure out exactly what we would need for our experiment. For our experiments to be possible, we needed a few very important materials and methods. One of the great pieces of technology that made our data much more accurate was the rangefinder. The rangefinder allowed us to receive accurate reading of when the waterfowl species was being spooked and moving off. As we used the rangefinder to determine the range of flight distance, which is the distance at which the animal begins to move off, we also identified the species of waterfowl. It was also important that we had a bird identification book and very clear binoculars to make sure that we placed the correct name with the species and avoided false data. To be accurate, it was important to eliminate variables such as the disturbance of the area before we were able to present. If humans visited the area recently before, our data may have varied. To avoid this, we visited our sites early in the morning so that we could eliminate the possibility of others disturbing the area beforehand. Our goal was to gather information on as many different species as possible. It was also important that we compared the different areas, the one that could be hunted and the ones that is protected during waterfowl hunting season. We visited 2 different areas, Silver Creek Preserve and Croy Creek Preserve Boardwalk. These 2 areas were very different in the amount of human activity they saw every day. That would hopefully give us data that we could easily compare. As we proceeded with our project, we found that much of our data was far from what we expected it to be. We came up with some very accurate data that we have put into a spreadsheet. In the spreadsheet, we came up with an average flight distance for Croy Creek Preserve of 40 yards for mallards. For Silver Creek Preserve, we came up with an average of 51 yards for mallards. With a difference of 11 yards for mallards, it shows that there is a difference in flight distance due to the area of study. However, in our study, we found out that within all the species combined, the difference in flight distance between the two areas was only slightly above 1 yard. This was hard to make a conclusion on. Within the mallards, we have a pretty significant difference, which was more important to our study considering that they were the only species that we consistently saw in each area. During our experiments, we observed many habits of waterfowl that rarely receive any attention. Some of the activities of the waterfowl had an immense effect on our data and observations. It was in our belief that waterfowl would become habituated and change their activities, but nowhere near as much as we learned from all our data. It was amazing to see how the different species reacted to the presence of humans in different areas. Throughout our study, we observed the habituation of waterfowl is something that happens and dramatically changes due to their surroundings. Silver Creek Preserve is an area that is able to be hunted during the winter season and does not see a great amount of human activity. As for Croy Creek Preserve, which is constantly being used by humans due to the boardwalk that crosses through it, sees a very steady amount of human activity. The data that we collected surely backs it up. The data that we collected from Silver Creek shows a steady flight distance for mallards and other species. The average flight distance for mallards was around 51 yards at Silver Creek. At Croy Creek, the average for mallards was around 40 yards. Although there were not a lot of different species around, there were mallards at every place, and this gave a great amount of data. We were also able to collect data from other species and put them together to come up with a total average flight distance for the two areas. With all the species together and averaged, the two areas were almost identical. There was a difference of only about 1 yard in flight distance separating the two study areas. Our project focused on a matter that had not seen much data or received much attention. Therefore, it was difficult to receive help and support from others or any website, but we succeeded to receive advice. Our wildlife biology teacher, Mr. Barnes, helped us with the techniques that were very important to any success with our project. He gave us the idea of using flight distance to collect data and receive accurate data. Without him, our project would never have happened. The Blaine County School District made it possible for our class to take field trips every Tuesday morning to the Croy Creek Preserve. Without their help and our wonderful bus driver, Tim, it wouldn't have been possible for our class to find the time to access the area and perform our experiments. Carrie York also contributed greatly to helping out with our projects. She allowed us to come in and share our project ideas and receive some very helpful feedback. So thanks for everybody for helping us out with our project, and thanks for listening about it.